Greetings everyone, and welcome to this walkthrough video for Assignment 2, which is about Shampooch Doggy Spa. Now, like most assignments and anything in life with instructions, I would always recommend reading the entire document before you get started, because right here at the bottom is a little bit of important information, namely that we want to use look near notation. If multi-value or derived attributes are needed, we're going to use the conceptual modeling symbols. And at this point, we're not going to be decomposing our many-to-many relationships. We're just going to let them stay as many-to-many relationships. And of course, don't include any attributes, entities, or relationships that are not specified in the case. And we should only need 3 entities to capture this entire story. So let's go ahead and get started. I have the assignment file pulled up here on the left side of the screen and just a blank PowerPoint presentation pulled up on the right side. And hopefully you did go through the walkthrough video for assignment 1, which had some tips on how to create beautiful entity relationship diagrams using PowerPoint. So we're going to be doing that once again and kind of building on some of the ideas that we talked about in that video. So I'm going to get started by just kind of highlighting this and deleting these text boxes because we're not going to be needing that. So we're going to start by just reading through the story and first identifying all of our entities and relationships. And we'll just create this very high-level presentation ERD. And then we'll go back and add our attributes and all of the attribute characteristics. And then finally, we'll add our deletion constraints and then write out in long form any business rules that we're not able to capture in the diagram. So we start here by saying Shampooch Doggy Spa is a high-end dog grooming service where spa technicians or employees groom dogs by providing services such as bath, teeth brushing, or nail clipping. So immediately, I think I see 2 entities, employees and dogs, and the relationship between employees and dogs is that employees groom dogs. Now, we also have services, and at this point, I'm not exactly sure what this is, because it sounds like employees also provide services to dogs, but that sounds a lot like employees groom dogs. So this may be the same thing as groom. We have some types of services here. I think we'll come back to this in just a moment. And then employees are identified by an employee ID, first name and last name. They may have certifications. Yeah, this all sounds like things describing attributes. So I'll kind of highlight that and we'll come back to that in just a minute. But let's go ahead and get our first couple of entities and the relationship between them added in PowerPoint. So for my blank presentation, I'm just going to go up to the Insert tab, go to Shapes, and I'm going to select just this box and draw something about yay big. And just to make this look a little bit nicer, a little bit more professional, I'm going to change this shape fill to be white and the shape outline to be black. I just think that is nice and clean looking. And then I'm going to double click in here to start typing. And the first entity that I'm interested in is employees. So I'm going to type employees, and oh no, we don't see anything just yet. And that's because when this shape fill was blue, the text was white. So we just don't see the white on white. But if I double click this, you can see it's highlighted. I'm going to go up to my Home tab, and right here from my text colors, select black, and then I may even make this just a little bit bigger. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now, so all of our entities will be the same size. What I'm going to do, instead of creating a whole new rectangle, is just highlight this, Control-C to copy, and then Control-V to paste, and put this over here, look at my guidelines, kind of line that up. And I'm going to change one of these to be dogs. And I'm going to do another shape and pick my diamond, which is down here in this flowchart section. And let's see. Yeah, about like that. Let's see. I need to move this over just a little bit. And you can see the way the guidelines are popping up. We're showing that the diamond is spaced equally between the entities at this point. And another quick way that we could change the look of this is if you highlight this box that you want to mimic the style of from our Home tab, there's this little paintbrush up here that says Format Painter. So if you have something highlighted, and this works in any Office application, has something highlighted, then click on Format Painter. The next thing you click on will take on all of the format of what you had before. So now we're a white fill with a black outline, and if we double click here, our text should already be black, and we can call this Grooms. Now, I don't like the way that's going over onto two lines, so I'll make that a little smaller. Could also make the diamond a little bit bigger. But here we have employees groom dogs, or dogs are groomed by employees. Let's go ahead and put some lines on here. So as I do this, note these anchor points popping up. I'm just going to click those and make sure that I am snapping my line to the anchor points. Because that way, if we need to move something around in the future, it is all just kind of connected. And I want to make my lines black in color instead of blue. So we want everything to look nice and professional here. Okay, so we're showing this relationship of employees grooming dogs. That's great. Now we have another relationship here where some senior employees mentor up to 4 junior employees. So we have a relationship where employees mentor other employees. Now this is a unary or recursive relationship, very much like the supervises relationship from the Bearcat stories. So I'm going to, again, just kind of copy and paste my relationship diamond here. And employees don't groom employees. Employees mentor other employees. And we'll build our relationship lines here. Now, one thing we can do, particularly in this unary relationship, to kind of make it a little bit more clear what's going on, is to put some labels on these lines. So in one direction, it is that employees mentor other employees. And see if I grab this handle on the text box, I can rotate that. And in the other direction, it is that an employee is mentored by some other employee. So employee mentors another employee, or an employee is mentored by another employee. Now we do have some description here of the participation and cardinality constraints. I don't think we've read anything about that for this employees groom dogs relationship, but here this says some senior employees mentor up to 4 junior employees. So this word some implies that employees have optional participation in the relationship of mentoring other employees, and then they have a maximum cardinality of 4. Okay, so in this direction, employees mentor a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 4 other employees. So I'm going to just copy and paste this text box. Using our look near notation, put a 0 for optional participation and a 4 to capture that maximum cardinality. I'm just going to drag this over here. And then we'll kind of do the same on the other side. It says employees have a maximum of 1 mentor or may not have any mentor at all. So this implies optional participation of the employee being mentored and a maximum cardinality of 1. So we'll double click here say a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 1. And as described in the text here, we are using look near notation, where we put the participation and cardinality near the entity as opposed to the look across notation where we put it across the relationship. Great, so I think we've captured this relationship of employees mentoring other employees. Let's go ahead and see what else we have here. So all dogs are assigned to an employee to provide grooming services. All right, all dogs. Okay, so this is saying dog has mandatory participation in this relationship. So here near the dog entity, I'm going to say we have mandatory participation, and I don't think we've said anything quite yet about the cardinality, so we can hold off on that for now. An employee may groom several dogs at once, so that's the cardinality of employee, many, or may not have any dogs to groom at all. So, maybe they're on break or something like that. So it sounds like employee is going to have optional participation and a cardinality of many. Okay, so we'll just insert a text box for that. We have optional participation and a cardinality of many. And then if a dog is getting multiple services, they're getting a bath and a nail clipping, the dog may be groomed by several employees. Okay, so there's our cardinality for dog, that a dog is groomed by at least one employee, but perhaps many employees. Okay, so we have a many-to-many relationship. The cardinality of employee is many, and the cardinality of dog is many. The date each service was provided and which employee provided the service should be recorded in the database. So the date and the employee that provided this sounds like this may be an attribute of some sort. So I'm going to highlight that, and we'll come back to that in a minute. Every dog's name, breed, and weight are recorded. Those also sound like attributes. Since multiple dogs might have the same name, dogs are identified by combining the name of the dog with the unique identifier of the owner. Again, this is something attribute related, and I think this will make more sense a little bit later. So next up, customers are uniquely identified by their phone number. So customers sounds like it might be an entity with an attribute like phone number. First name and last name are recorded for all customers, and they have the option to provide their email address to get special offers. So I think these are all attributes. Most dogs are owned by customers. So dogs are owned by a customer. However, some employees also own dogs. Okay, so employees can also own dogs. So let's go ahead and start by adding this customer entity. Let's stick this kind of down here. And the relationship between customers and dogs is that customers own dogs. But then I think we also have another ownership relationship because employees can own dogs. Okay, so I'm gonna copy my ownership relationship here. And we're going to say employees can own dogs. And then just so there's no ambiguity on this diagram, I'm going to call this own underscore C and own underscore E. Now let's talk about the cardinality and participation here. it says most dogs are owned by customers. So that implies to me that we have optional participation of dogs in this relationship with customers, because most dogs are owned by customers, but it's not all dogs. So we'll put a text box here, and we're going to say dogs has optional participation, and we don't really know about the cardinality just yet. Move this up just a little bit. So most dogs are owned by customers. However, some employees also own dogs. Okay, so we're saying employees, not all employees own dogs, but some employees own dogs. So I think the participation of employee in this relationship is also going to be partial or optional. Now, when thinking about the participation of dogs in this relationship, since we know some dogs are owned by customers and some dogs are owned by employees, we know that not all dogs are going to participate in this relationship either. So dogs are going to have optional participation in this relationship as well. And then regardless, a dog is always owned by only one employee or one customer. Okay, so whether it's an employee or a customer, a dog is going to be owned by a maximum of one customers, so there's our cardinality, or a maximum of one employee. So there's our cardinality for that. And I'm going to actually give myself just a little bit more space here. There we go. And then here, all customers own at least one dog. Okay, so you can't be a customer of a Shampooch Doggy Spa unless you have a dog. That kind of makes sense. So that's saying the participation of customer is mandatory or total, and it's all customers own at least one dog. Right? So a customer could, of course, have many dogs, so the cardinality of customer is many. I think we've got everything sorted here except the cardinality of employees in this relationship. And I think it makes sense if customers can own many dogs. Employees also could own many dogs, right? And it says, employees also own dogs with an S. I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that our cardinality of employees is also going to be many. Excellent. So this is coming together quite nicely so far. Next up, if an employee quits or is fired, all records of their grooming services they have provided are deleted from the database. Any employees they were mentoring will be assigned to have the general manager as their mentor until a new mentor can be identified for them. That sounds like deletion rules. So we're going to come back to that in just a minute. Once per quarter, the database is scanned for inactive customers. If a customer is not visited in the last 5 years, they are deleted from the database. Again, I think maybe deletion rules here. When a customer is deleted, their dog should be deleted from the database. Similarly, when an employee is deleted, their dog or dogs should be deleted from the database as well. When a dog is removed from the database, all records of the grooming services they have received should be removed as well. Okay, so we're all deletion constraints down here, and recall that the assignment says we only need 3 entities, and we currently do have 3 entities: employees, dogs, and customers. So I think we're in pretty good shape right there. All right, so now I think we have a pretty good presentation layer ERD. Let's go ahead and take a look at our attributes. So first up, it says employees are identified by an imp ID and have a first name and last name. Okay, so the way I'm going to create my attributes is, and there are a couple of different ways you can do this, but I think this is the cleanest. Back up on my Insert tab, I'm going to draw just a line here, kind of like this. We'll make that black. And then on the Shape Outline drop-down, I'm going to go down to Weight, and I'm going to select More Lines. And in this Format Shape dialog, on the end arrow type, I'm going to click on that and say we want this ball at the end of our arrow. And end arrow size, let's pick just the largest thing we can. And now, so I did this in the backwards direction. And now we have a line with a ball on the end of it, right? So this is kind of like our regular old attribute. And now we need to put an attribute name to this. So insert text box. And the first thing we talked about was this employee ID. Okay, so we'll just kind of put this right here near our employee. And since we say employees are identified by their employee ID, we're going to go ahead and underline this to indicate it is our primary key. So I'm going to double click and then just click on this little underline button here, or you could hit Control U to underline that. And it's a little hard to see because PowerPoint has helpfully underlined this in red. Say ignore. Now you can see that that is underlined, indicating that employee ID is a unique identifier. And employees also have a couple of other attributes like first name and last name. So I'm just going to copy this nice line that we've already created here. Let's see, maybe rearrange things just a little bit. So F name for first name, we don't want this to be underlined. And then right here, L name for last name. Now since these dots are filled in, these are mandatory attributes, right? And it says, you know, employees have a first name and last name. We don't have any indication here that this is optional, so we're going to treat that as mandatory. Also, employees may have certifications in specialties such as large dogs, long hair, or treating dry skin. All employees must have at least one certification. So this sounds like a mandatory attribute and also a multi-value attribute because we might have multiple certifications. So to do that, just going to copy this again. We'll call this certifications. And at this point, we would only have a single value for certifications. We need this to be a multi-value attribute. And there's not a real nice, clean way to get a circle around this. So what I'm going to do is actually just draw another circle, which is, you know, about the right size. I'm going to say the shape fill is no fill, and the shape outline is black. And I believe that's going to be good enough for what we are doing here. All right, so I don't see anything else about attributes here. Again, we have our cardinality and participation about this grooms relationship. And yeah, here we have some additional attributes. So the date that each service was provided and which employee provided the service to the dog should be recorded in the database. So we have these services like bath and nail clipping and teeth brushing, things like that, which are all, it sounds to me like part of this relationship between employees grooming dogs. Because when an employee grooms a dog, they provide some kind of service. Okay, so the service is not an attribute of the employee, and it's not an attribute of the dog, but it's this interaction of the employee doing something to the dog. So in this relationship, I'm going to say service is an attribute of the relationship, and then we also want to record the date that that service was provided, and that's also going to be an attribute of the relationship. So if you think about what it looks like for an employee to groom a dog, right? You have this employee, Tom, grooms a dog, Rover, right? And Tom gives Rover a bath on September 8th, 2022, right? Or Tom brushes the teeth of Rover on September 8th, 2022. Okay, so it's this combination of an employee and a dog and the service they provided and on what date, right? And it's important to capture the date because the same employee might give the same service to the same dog multiple times, right? So maybe, Rover gets brought in once a week for a bath and it's Tom giving them a bath every week. You want to be able to distinguish between, what date, which actual bath we're talking about, what employee, what dog, and what date that occurred. So service and date are both going to be attributes of this relationship. Great. Okay, so next up, every dog's name, breed, and weight are recorded. Okay, so that's 3 attributes, and I wonder if I could just maybe copy all of this and be very efficient. Okay, so our dog has a name, a breed, and a weight. That is not a unique identifier. We don't want that underlined. Since multiple dogs might have the same name, dogs are identified by combining the name of the dog with the unique identifier of their owner. Okay, so it sounds like name is almost an identifier for the dog, but we know that many dogs may have the same name. So it's not a unique identifier, but it sounds like it is part of the identifier for the dog, also known as a partial key. So to indicate this is a partial key, let's actually start by highlighting that and underlining it. And I'm going to highlight it again. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to the font properties. And here you see we have an option that says underline style. And it just says single line right now. From this drop down list, you can select any number of different looking underlines. I'm going to pick this dashed line right here, click OK. And now you see we have this dashed underline indicating this is a partial key. Now, since this is a partial key, of course, that means this entity, dogs, must be a weak entity. So I'm going to click on that, right click, say format shape, and kind of similarly, we have an option here to change some things about this outline. And where we see a compound type here, I'm going to click that and select this double line. Now, at this point, that is not very obvious that that is a double line. You have to zoom in really tight to see that. So I'm also going to turn up the width, let's say to about 3. Yeah, now that's a little bit more clear that that is a double line. So we have dogs as a weak entity, and weak entities must be in an identifying relationship with a base or strong entity that identifies them. Now, in this particular case, dogs can be owned by customers or by employees. So we actually have 2 identifying relationships that dogs could participate in, this owns C or owns E. Okay, so I'm going to make both of these identifying relationships, and then it actually occurs to me now that dogs does not necessarily have to participate in either one of these relationships based on our participation constraints. So we're going to have to do something to take care of that in just a second. But for now, let's click on this, and then we'll go to compound type, make that a double, and then again, turn the width up to about 3. Actually, let's go up to 4. That makes it a little bit more obvious even. And so we could do the same thing, adjust that for this, or we could use our Format Painter tool. So if we highlight this one we've already done, click Format Painter, and then hit that, it just kind of automatically goes. So that's really good. So dogs are weak entity with this partial key of name and an identifying relationship with both customers and employees that might own the dogs. But now we need to take care of this issue that dogs could technically not be owned by either employees or customers. And we know here in the business case, it says a dog is always owned by only one customer or one employee or customer. So we have to participate in one of these relationships. So just like in the Bearcat story, we're going to use our arc notation to solve this problem. So from shapes, I'm going to come up here and just select this arc, and I'm going to draw it kind of down here so we can adjust it as needed. I'm going to make it black, and also I'm going to right click, and on Format Shape, we're going to put some arrows on this. And so since we're saying a dog is either owned by an employee or a customer, but it's not going to be both, it's going to be one or the other. So this is going to be our exclusive arc. So I'm going to put it over the relationship here, and I'm going to say my beginning arrow is an arrow, and my ending arrow is an arrow. And yeah, if we wanted this to be a little bit more obvious, maybe we could make these bigger. I like big, obvious arrows. Great, so now we're saying the dog has to participate in one of these relationships or the other, because all dogs are going to be owned by a customer or by an employee. And we have these two identifying relationships depending on how we or depending on who owns the dog. All right, I feel like we're getting really close. We don't have any attributes of customers just yet. So let's take a look at that. Customers are uniquely identified by their phone number. First and last name are recorded for all customers, and customers have the option to provide their email address to get special offers. Okay, so again, just to kind of speed things up, I'm going to kind of grab this stuff here and just bring it down for my customers. So just like employees, customers have first and last names, but they're not identified by an employee ID. They're identified by their phone number. So that's our unique identifier for customers. And then customers also have one additional attribute, email address, which is optional. So we'll go ahead and just create one more line here. And since this is optional, we need this circle to not be filled in. So we actually don't have the option for a non-filled circle. So we're just going to make this a regular end with nothing on it. And then we are going to draw a little circle to put on the end. We're going to make the fill white and the outline black, and then just kind of put it on there like that. And that is going to be email. All right, great. So at this point, I believe we've captured all of our entities, all of the relationships between the entities, our weak entity of dog with this partial key of name, and the identifying relationships with either customers or employees. So a dog is going to be uniquely identified by either the combination of a customer's phone number and their name, or the employee's employee ID and the dog's name. We've captured all of our cardinality and participation constraints. We have this unary relationship with employees that mentor other employees. And now I think we're down to just our deletion rules that need to be put in place. So that's described in these last two paragraphs here. if an employee quits or is fired, all records of the grooming services they have provided are deleted from the database. Okay, so this sounds like the cascade rule that we want to apply. But we're not saying if an employee is fired, we're deleting the record of all the dogs they have ever provided a service to. We're just deleting all the records of them having provided these services. So we want to cascade that deletion not all the way down to dogs, but just to this grooms relationship. Okay, so we're going to indicate that by putting a little C right here next to grooms. So we'll cascade our deletion to there. Any employees they were mentoring will be assigned to have the general manager as their mentor until a new mentor can be identified for them. Okay, so that's talking about this mentoring relationship. And it sounds like if I was mentoring an employee and I got fired, that employee would then have a default mentor assigned to them. So that's going to be the set default rule. And we're saying here an employee mentors another employee. So this is the child side of this relationship. So I'm going to put my D for set default right there. Okay, and now we're talking about what do we do if customers become inactive? They stop using Shampooch for whatever reason. So we say once a quarter, we're going to scan the database, and any customer that has not visited in the last 5 years, we're just going to purge their records out of the database. So we're going to delete that customer. And when we delete that customer, we want to also delete any data about their dog. Okay, so we're going to cascade that deletion. Of course, in this relationship between customers and dogs, customer is the parent because a customer can have many dogs, but a dog is owned by only one customer. Okay, so we cascade the deletion. We're going to indicate that by putting a little C next to dogs. And then similarly, when an employee is deleted, their dog is going to be deleted from the database. So we're just doing the same kind of cascade right here with the employee. Let's move some things around just a little bit to give us some more room. Excellent, that looks good. And when a dog is removed from the database, right, which would, I guess, primarily happen if a customer or employee was deleted, or maybe, if a dog passes away or isn't going to be coming into Shampooch anymore, the customer, might ask for the dog to be deleted from the database. We're going to remove all records of the grooming service that dog has received. So actually, it looks like this cascade kind of works in both directions. If an employee leaves, we're getting rid of these records of the dog being groomed. And if a dog leaves, then we're cascading that to delete the records of the dog being groomed. So a lot of cascade rules put in place here. Now, as far as other business rules that we're not able to capture in this diagram, there are a handful of things here that we might want to document just to make sure we're being very clear when we're interacting with our business people. For example, that the domain of values for this attribute service is bath, teeth brushing, and nail clipping. So I'm actually just right here going to kind of make some notes. Domain of values for service includes bath, nail clipping, and teeth brushing. We also have some information here about the domain for certifications, large dogs, long hair, and dry skin. So domain of values for And then we might also include something like email address is optional and use only for sending promotional offers, something like that. All right, so at this point, I think we've created a rather nice looking entity relationship diagram that captures all of the business requirements for Shampooch Doggy Spa. If you want to submit this as a PowerPoint file, you can do that. You can take a screenshot of this and put it into Microsoft Word, and that will be okay as well. Or really kind of my preference here would be for you to submit this as a PDF. So if you just go to File and select Save as Adobe PDF, and then Save, now you have a very nice looking PDF file. So that's it for this walkthrough for Assignment 2, creating an ERD for Shampooch Doggy Spa. I hope you found this useful and informative. I look forward to seeing your submissions and hope that with this knowledge you all can go forth and do great things.